Well, first I need to say props to the curators of the program, because I feel it's perfectly set up from the panel and the talk we just heard. I will continue beating the drum of AI value across the organization. So welcome from our end. I'm Thomas, I'm representing Dentsu Health. I'm with Merkle, I'm the Chief Solutions Officer, and so think of us as the technology piece within the big Dentsu combine. And I have to also apologize for the title, because the way we did it is we created the presentation and then asked our internal chatbot which would be the most clickbaity title that talk could get to draw a biggest possible audience, and that's what our co-pilot internally at Dentsu came up with. But still, I will talk about the HCP experience, but it's not so much like a predictive, but more try to be hands-on. So quick on Dentsu. Dentsu is one of the big media agencies that you are aware of, and within Dentsu we gather our health competencies in Dentsu Health. It's our vertical, where we bring together the health experts for all the different practices, be it in media to help you promote products, but also all the way until building solutions like HCP portals, the websites, etc., from the technology bits. So that's what we do. You can find us in our booth in the expo hall. So let's get in. I want to talk a bit first, and that's the first thing you will see slides that you also saw already in other presentations about the AI and the illusion of progress. Because I don't know if you witnessed, but we had it in the opening actually of your talk was pretty similar, that we're kind of witnessing a FOMO-driven crisis when it comes to AI, right? So as you know, every second dollar in venture capital goes into AI. 80% of the companies say we already ran a couple pilots and we will do more pilots next year. However, now it's getting headwind. I mean, this became like the most cited study in the last, half year, right? So MIT said 95% of all the POCs you're running, all the pilots you're doing, create no value. No additional dollar of revenue, etc., is generated through all these things you're doing and investing in. So that's why it's some harsh feedback, right? And when you drill into the report, they say, especially the bigger the company gets, the harder it gets for you guys to scale all of your pilots, etc., right? And unfortunately, health was not in the two industries that actually made some progress through all these pilots. HBR, like Harvard Business Review, they called this the experimentation trap. So in a similar study, they say that most companies get stuck in doing pilot after pilot because then, the technology advances. So you did a pilot on, building your own internal ChatGPT, and then agentic AI comes up, and you do your first pilot on agentic AI, et cetera. So you're caught in this trap of endlessly trying to keep up with technology and doing pilot after pilot and not getting actual value out of it. I like sports, so the coolest analogy I could find is from basketball, and there was a coach who said, never mistake activity for achievement. I think that summarizes it quite well. So we're pretty active, all of us, we're super active, but we should ask ourselves, are we really achieving? Are we scoring? Or are we just shooting? So enough of the provocation, right? So question, of course, for us is, well, is this true for our industry? And therefore, we started thinking a bit like, how do we frame that, right? We cannot just say yes or no. So if you put the HCP in the center, and you think about, what kind of dimensions matter when it comes to AI adoption, you of course have the clinical bit on the top, so everything between an HCP and, patients. That is one dimension. And then there's the other dimension of the HCP and other pharma companies, right? So all the information we're sharing, etc. But then there's also the AI bit. And that would start with, let's say, old-fashioned, like the stuff that came up 3 years ago with ChatGPT, etc., like the assistant AI, like a co-pilot type of thing that helps us doing things. And then the agentic, where we give AI the mandate to do things on our behalf, right? Smarter, faster, etc. And if you open that kind of opportunity space for, adopting AI as an HCP, you come up with 4 different quadrants, right? And that's a nice thing for us to frame it, right? So you have the augmented care on the top left, for instance, an AI supports diagnosis and treatments, but of course, it's only an help in analysis. This is a very underdeveloped field, obviously, like autonomous medicine, but we hear a lot of stuff in the operational intelligence. This is all the little helpers you have built and that are running on your internal stacks, etc., as we've just heard. And more we're seeing stuff like, from the Salesforce Viva Volt debate, etc. That is a lot about the agentic moves. How can we, drive more engagement through automated email campaigns and that kind of things. So you could, let me ask again: is pharma any different? Obviously, to fill it with data and understand where the industry is and do a little bit of a benchmarking ourselves, we quickly looked into, I think it was 25 different conferences of that type, and then we scraped all the conference agendas, like the one from here, the one from Dubrovnik earlier this year, etc., and we tried to get our hands on as much presentations as possible. So these were 350 presentations, and we, uncovered kind of 130 individual use cases for AI adoption around this HCP space that I just showed you. And you might have seen a lot of those presentations, actually. We watched a colleague of yours actually talking about automated content tagging earlier this year. We also saw, you saw maybe from our own work, stuff we did with Europharma on the scrolling therapy for the Parkinson's disease, etc. So you've seen these. So what comes out when you look at all these conferences? In the end, what we talk about in this kind of little bubble of ourselves mainly takes place in the bottom left corner. That means the majority of the AI work that we're doing, that we're talking about, that we're sharing with ourselves, happens in stuff like content tagging, omni-channel automation, etc. And of course, given the technology is moving to that direction, my prediction would be that in the next conferences you will hear a lot more about, the bottom right corner. As we're not, most of us are not from clinical AI, but whenever we have a cool clinical AI case that we're allowed to share, then it definitely pops up on these events, right? That means the cool stuff, to be honest, is on the top left usually, right? So we can, when you dig deep into these are all the titles from these different speeches, right? So you have automated content tagging and translation for medical materials, Gen AI drafting compliant email and CLM copy for MLR review. So you get the point, right? So these are all the individual use cases that you can uncover when you look into the things. So question is, what is it that this really says about us, right? What can we learn from having this meta review, etc.? Well, we think there are kind of 4 things that I find interesting, so 4 themes I would frame that I want to tap on. The first is, what you can really see is that useful is not always valuable. So that is kind of a bit of a confirmation of the MIT study, right? We did a lot of useful things, call them tiny little helpers, automated content tagging, etc., etc. But it doesn't really change the work for the healthcare professional, does it? The day looks the same. Just within your day, you have this little helper that helps you doing one thing a bit faster, smarter, etc. That's not bad. I mean, I like the statement in the panel where it says if you multiply it up and sum it up, that's quite a significant amount of savings you can generate. But, if you look for the big value, you can question it. It's also a matter of fact that the co-pilots don't bring the change by itself, right? So it means, you have to invest a lot to get something very simple done. That's how you can frame it, right? So you have to pass internal governance boards, regulatories, and compliance, and in the end you have this little thing that hopefully helps you a bit, but it's not an agentic workflow yet, right? It's still just a little helper. But what I found interesting is that, not coming from the industry, I would have my expectation would have been that you use the regulatory environment a lot as an excuse, but that's actually not the case. When you look into the sentiment of all the talks, the opposite is the case. So we say, well, look, there are some boundaries, but if you play it smart, it actually is a good guardrail and it unlocks the real value-driving cases. So that is a nice theme to stick with, right, for a bit. And the last is, as I said, there seems to be a leverage on the upstream. That means the more it is possible for us to get our hands on, patient data, you would say, that is opt-in, that is given to us for free, so to say, the easier it gets to create super cool value-adding, solutions. A lot of theory, a lot of meta studies, etc. We didn't want to close there, but we want to put it into action a bit, right? So there is a method I will show up, a method how we try to unlock value as then to health, and then a case. So how do you really then create those solutions that add value, right? That are not like just yet another little helper, etc., etc. Well, we believe it sits with AI value at the core, right? So that means you, of course, and that's what I mean. Like I'm repeating what you've heard from the other speakers, what you heard in the panel. You should start with thinking about where can AI really add value, and instead of doing AI for AI's sake, etc., etc. What we thought about is, I'm not sure who was there when in, I think 2008, they came up with the business model canvas. A simple framework that allowed you to map your business model, ideate around it. But the cool thing was, based on these building blocks of a business model, you were always staying within the boundaries. You were always thinking about the consumer. You were always thinking about the activities and the partners you need to unlock and get in. And we basically copied that and turned it into an AI value framework, right? Because if you think about it, it's exactly the same that we need to do. You need to understand which data blocks do you have, how do you, govern that data, who is the user of the AI application, is it consumer or patient facing, in the end, what's the business case, etc. Let's play it through, right? Let's say you want to start conceptualizing for the most valuable AI-powered dermatology app, right? A very simple thing. You would start with saying, okay, there's this about patients with skincare problems. The AI does the diagnosis, and therefore I use a modern LLM and do some customization bits. And then I build like my little chatty helper that gives direct advice, and therefore I store all the photos of the people take from their skin in a database, etc., etc., etc. And that's what will end up here, right? What is that? That's too dumb, right? That's too simple thought. Because what happens then is you don't create value with that, right? So this is useful maybe to some, but this is not valuable. It's a chatty helper, and no work is really moved. Who benefits from that kind of solution, right? And actually, regulation becomes an excuse here, because you can easily challenge that solution saying, hey, where's the data stored? This is not allowed, etc., etc. So instead, when you think it through and think about your two target group that should come together, which is the HCP on the one side and the patient on the other side, both of them matter, right? Both of them need to be centered. And for both of them, you need to get them a very clear value prop where the AI can help and not. And therefore, you maybe come up with a more advanced approach. Something like, okay, you need a computer vision model running on your private cloud, and then it's linked to, an LLM for the conversational part, because you might still want to build an app and collect the data in the existing portal. You get the point, right? And in the end, it should all, roll up in a nice business case for you. So think of that as a nice, method. And I would say enough theory. We did something very alike for a client of ours, and I just want to roll the case video for a minute and a bit. So again, and then I will go into the details of what the AI did in that case. Is it playing?
900 million. The number of people suffering from skin diseases in the world at any time. While most of these diseases are preventable with routine checkup, skin diagnosis is not easily accessible, and they are difficult to understand. Truth is, our skin changes a lot in 365 days. Skin self-examination should be done at least once a month for early detection of any problems. As a leading brand in Asian skincare, Cal always believes in better solutions for a beautiful life. Introducing Beauty in Diagnosis. A new AI algorithm that turns complicated skin diagnosis into beautiful face art, illuminating areas that require users' utmost attention. We launched this diagnosis as a web app so consumers can easily perform self-check anytime, anywhere. As the user's skin undergoes changes, our face art evolves in response and notifies the user promptly. This new solution has sparked considerable interest, and we see more people perform self-checks more than once in a month. More importantly, we've managed to change the public's perception towards skin diagnosis.
So, stopping here, I guess it gets pretty clear, right? I picked one from the top left corner, right, as you've seen on the radar. And obviously, it's not about the actual treatment, but more the self-assassination, etc., etc. And I want to, let's say, explain a bit what the AI does and why the AI unlocks value, in our opinion, right? So as you've seen, there is a very interactive, playful element for scanning your skin, right? So to keep you, that is there to collect as much data as possible in a playful way, right? Because if you just do one picture, it might not have gathered enough data. But if you have these playful elements on your face, people stay longer, and therefore you collect more data of how the skin changes, or identifying all the different patterns we're looking for, right? And that is not done with like modern AI, but with like old-fashioned AI, because that's a traditional computer vision model that is trained on the data the company, of course, owns proprietarily. You then take it, to the over to the treatment, and that is also not done by a modern LLM, but that's a traditional MLOps model. Like this is a pattern recognition case that then identifies what the core problem is, and then, of course, for each problem there is a standard way to solve it, right? And that is the mapping that has been done. And only in the last bits, right, when you get like a personal treatment plan, something, right, then the modern LLMs come into play, because then we can use it to generate the personalized messaging to the, in that case, obviously it's not a patient, but we should say it's a client, but it's very relatable. Only then the LLM has a job to be done, right? That was in the video. So to conclude, right, I hope this little talk, the message got through, right? So the question for us is not whether AI works. I mean, AI works. It worked for years. Now it's getting even simpler. We will get agentic workflows in the next year, etc. So that's easy. The question really is where AI is worthwhile for all of us, for you guys, in the different processes. Think of the 4 quadrants as a start, and then dig deeper into the use cases you might find on this long list. So I want to conclude with 4 questions. It's always nice to take something home. This is 4 questions we came up with to conclude. And again, I will use the radar. So if you think about doing something on the top left, is it left? Yeah. You should, of course, think about the accessible data first. As I said, like at best, you have access to user data where the user opt in, right? This can be cardiovascular data that is collected from the Apple Watch, or visual data that's collectible via a mobile phone, etc. When you have that kind of data, usually it's easy to get into super value-adding cases that would sit on the top left. This is a tough cookie so far still. You remember automated medication, etc., is something where regulatory really stops us doing a lot. However, you could think about where do we get small governed actions, like alerting, scheduling, where the AI might help. Identifying a pattern, alerting someone. That could be a good thing to think about. In the bottom, actually, it's easier. On the top left, we should all aim for an AI-supported content supply chain currently. That is something that is doable, reachable. We saw it in a lot of your own presentations that you're working on it. So if you're not doing that as a pharma company, you're currently falling behind. Most of you guys are doing that, right? And the same will also happen on the bottom right, where if your CRM just blasts standard emails and the standard communications, then you're also kind of lagging behind a bit. We're more and more moving into the agentic space there, right? So to conclude, I mean, this obsolete or orchestrated, as our co-pilot came up with, I think the answer is pretty clear. It's definitely orchestrated, but still the choice is yours. And with that, thank you, and hope to see some of you guys at our booth for a little chat up. Thank you.